Something that I often think about is the holistic nature of our health. So let me explain that a little bit. I think we tend to, as human beings and really as women, compartmentalize the different areas of our life. Like, here I am, I'm a mom, I'm raising kids. Here I am, I'm at the gym working out, I'm at church now, put on my church hat. And economics, our wealth, or taking care of our finances tends to be way off somewhere in the distance, all by itself. And I really think that these things do not exist in a vacuum. Rather, there are many parts of a whole, from our mental health to our physical, emotional, spiritual, and of course, our financial health. And women often have not thought much about their financial health, which could be a real problem as we reach 50, 60 and beyond, if we don't have some sort of plan and we're not prepared. And I've seen this happen before. So this is going to be our discussion today. I have with me Nancy Griffin, who is the founder of Women, Worth, and Wellness Incorporated. And she spent absolutely years guiding women toward financial empowerment and wellness. So let that sink in a little bit. Financial empowerment. She is a wealth advisor who is committed to helping women lead fearlessly. She has been recognized by receiving the Canada 125 Award for Outstanding Community Leadership. She is a published author, and Nancy believes that enhancing net worth, and I really love this, net worth and self-worth can amplify health and overall wellness. Nancy, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Carol. This is amazing. Good for you to be doing all these amazing podcasts with many guests and on really, really, really important topics.
Thank you. You know, and I'm sure you have found this too. It's really a blessing to meet people. And I even like meeting people who have opposing views to myself. Sometimes I'll have people on the podcast who, we don't see eye to eye, but I love that. I love the conversations that we can have when we open up our mind to different things and possibilities.
Yes, definitely. I think, crises are always opportunities, as I guess it's an ancient Chinese proverb, is it not? But COVID has brought us all virtual, which means we can connect with people from all over the world. Pre-COVID, imagine how you met people. You had to go to a conference in some faraway place. Meet many people. So, thank you, COVID, in many respects.
Yeah, there is always that. I don't like to use really cliches, but that's silver lining in the worst of
Right, the
circumstances
worst.
sometime. And yes, funny, my son said to me the other night, I should have bought stocks in Zoom, I think he was saying. But who would have known? Zoom just wasn't a thing prior to COVID.
No,
So here we are. I really want to dive into so many different things, but how do you feel health and wealth come together, overlap, intertwine?
thank you for the question, because that's really the essence of Women, Worth, and Wellness. I was a wealth advisor, and a lot of my clients were women. And what I realized was women have an incredible amount of responsibility for their family's health and well-being. When we think of finances, we think that's kind of a male job. That's the man in the family. He's looking after the money. But then the wife, the mother, is expected to understand about everybody's health pertaining to parents and kids, her staff, herself, the works. And so what I decided to do was partner up with many not-for-profit women's health-related organizations to bring their information to the attention of my clients, so that if they wanted more information about heart disease, for example, which is the leading cause of death for women, that they were now better informed about some of the symptoms that are completely different from men's, and they now have resources. So the little that I could do to connect them with more information, more awareness, more contacts, the better. I also remember my mother saying, which is probably what every mother's saying was, if you don't have your health, dear, you don't have anything. So before we start talking about your portfolio and what sorts of things you should have in your portfolio, let's talk about your health first, because true health that's positive and good and well understood and well managed is really true wealth.
Love it so much. And I couldn't agree more. And I think too, there's that mental health aspect because if we are worried about money, if we're struggling or we don't have a plan and we think, what if one day it's just me and I have to, I have to struggle. And that was what happened with my mom. It was a different era. And so she wasn't prepared when she and my father divorced. She really struggled and all of us kids had to step in, which was fine. Absolutely. It was our honor and pleasure to do so. But we had to step in and financially help her because there was no safety net. There was no plan.
I know. And, as I've talked to many different people, the one thing that I keep reinforcing is at every age and stage, you need to have a trusted advisor pertaining to your health and pertaining to your wealth. Because to think that somebody else is going to look after you and, it'll all be fine, you cannot do that. It is your life. You need to stay vertical for as long as you possibly can, and you need to have financial support to survive and thrive. Now, lots of people survive and thrive to really high levels, and lots of people survive and thrive to really low levels. But the important thing to always remember is you are a standalone human being that needs to pay attention, first of all, to your health, but then your wealth as well. And those trusted advisors are the ones that can help you. Trusted advisor is a person who cares about you, whose job it is to care about you. And I know in both of those professional arenas, people need to be accredited in order to be that professional in that community. Now, we all know that there's some people do a better job at being those, looking after those accreditations than others. So that's when you want to pay attention to what is their approach, but what is their attitude? You want to know what their attitude is towards you. Like sometimes that professional advisor will just discount you as a client. Really want to get a handle on who that is. And it's really difficult because you've got to shop around until you find that person who really is going to have your back pertaining to your health, but also pertaining to your wealth.
Really good advice. How do we find, you said accredited, but what are the questions women should be asking?
Well, as it pertains to your wealth, and I just gave this advice the other day to a woman who's in New York. I'm a certified financial planner, and that's a designation that is definitely in the US as well. And shop around, Google CFPs near me. Now, those people everybody wants to have a client who has gazillions of dollars, but not every certified financial planner operates that way. So it requires some really, really, really careful shopping. That's a good starting point. The other starting point is asking friends, family members, other people whom you respect, who are you working with and how well is that person looking after your well-being?
Mhm. Very good advice. As it stands now, and you might not have an answer for this, it just occurred to me as you were speaking, but what percentage of women over 50 do you think are really keyed into this American, Canadian, just in general in our culture, really understanding that they might need this type of help?
I would think that at least 50-50. It depends on what that 50-year-old has been doing. So if that 50-year-old married somebody whose career has been exceptionally successful and they've been at home raising a family, they may not have paid a lot of attention to this. On the other hand, if that 50-year-old has worked with a corporation, that corporation will have retirement funds as part of their compensation, and they may be doing some seminars to help them be well educated about what they have and what they will need to have. So, everybody's different. The other thing is when you're a wealth advisor and you bring on a new client, the most important 50% of what you do as that professional is to know your client, really know your client. And if you haven't known your client to the in-depth extent that you should have, you are at risk of losing your accreditation because that's the foundation of that business. Because once you know your client, you know what their priorities are, you know how much money they have, you know what that money has to be directed towards, you know what their risk reward scenario is. Like there's a whole other aspect that you go into as part of that know your client exceptionally well. And it's kind of like your health practitioner as well. When you go to that a trusted health advisor, they want to get blood work. They want to lower the microscope on everything they possibly can so they can get a handle on what is your health scenario at this point in time.
Now, is there a difference? Like, okay, we have money with, say, Fidelity, and many people use something like Vanguard, Fidelity, and somebody is investing on your behalf. Is a financial planner going to be separate from that?
No, Fidelity is terrific. When I was a wealth advisor, I loved Fidelity. I did a lot of work with Fidelity. I went to a couple of their conferences in Boston, which was terrific. Really, really good. And actually, this is kind of a side story. I was at one of their conferences. We were at Hyannisport. We were at the Kennedy Center. And that was the unfortunate night when John Jr. was flying over to Martha's Vineyard. I know, we couldn't believe it because we were so happy to be there because, of course, the next day we've got tours of Boston and whatever. And the next day we realized what had happened the night before. So there we were. But Fidelity is exceptional. You can't go wrong with Fidelity. But how you purchase Fidelity is by having that wealth advisor recommend their different investment portfolios. But again, they've got ones that are really high risk. They've got ones that are really low risk. So that wealth advisor is the person who gets to know you, to know which of what their offerings are that would be most suited to you. Rather than you doing a self-directed and picking it off yourself. Oh, I really like that. Oh, I might, that's what a wealth advisor.
I was thinking of my son. That's why I was laughing because he handles his own
Yeah.
investments, but he's 24 too,
Right.
so a little bit different there.
He's learning.
He's learning, yeah, and he's very interested in the process. So I think that's his way of learning.
Perfect.
Now, looking at my daughters, and they might listen to this or might not, but not to throw them under the bus, but like my son is really interested in investment, as I mentioned, and he's constantly looking at the markets. He's constantly educating himself on what the landscape is like, especially right now. It's really volatile. But my girls are like, don't want to talk about it. Don't want to know about it. But we had set something up for them when they're young and then transferred it over to them when they got to be of age. But that interest is not there. Are you seeing that the younger women, what are you seeing with trends there? Are they not interested until later? Are they starting to get the idea they need to start now?
That's a big, 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 huge question. Back to your son, that's a guy thing. That is a guy thing. But for your daughters, it isn't a gal thing. But if those gals, and I would expect that they want to be savvy and sophisticated, it would be in their best interest to pay attention. And maybe their brother can help them out. Maybe amongst the three of them, or however many, let them start a little pool for fun themselves and find a way for them to become educated. Because if they don't pay attention, if they're not participating, then they're very vulnerable. They're extremely vulnerable.
Yes. Yes. And that is my concern. And I had a smile on my face because he's the youngest. So
Okay.
sometimes when he gives advice, they're like, get out of here, little brother. You know how that goes.
Yes, yes, yes.
Now, with your organization, are you working primarily with women who are midlife and beyond, or is it women of all ages?
It can be women of all ages, but from a generational standpoint, it's primarily women and beyond. Women Worth and Wellness was 30 years last year, so 31 this year. And so over time, it really has evolved. And during that period of time, women have started to earn a whole lot more than they were 30 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
But in addition to that, they're now inheriting incredible amounts of wealth from their parents. And going forward, they will from their partner, assuming that partner is male, where that male's longevity is not as long as females. So really, we now start to move into the whole philanthropy and legacy planning area, where you're stewarding incredible amounts of wealth, which is never anything that women have really made as a AAA1 priority. But huge, huge. And women's philanthropy is quite different from men's, quite different. It's very quiet. What woman do you know who has wealth and is a philanthropist is putting her name on a hospital wing?
True. Very true. So what are you seeing in that area? What types of things are women
Well,
doing?
my main issue is to get women to realize the power of their philanthropy. It's really transformational. Like your daughters, don't just close your eyes to the amount of power that you've got with this wealth that you now can steward. Like, pay attention, think about, work with a trusted advisor, and find out ways that this can be directed, which enhances both your net worth and, of course, your self worth when you're in a position of giving. If you're feeling good about who you've directed those funds to, then you feel so much better. But educate yourself. The worst thing that can happen is you don't. Like, my husband died. Now I've got all this money. It's like, I don't know what to do. And you just let it be, and you die, and it's a mess. And it was a huge missed opportunity. So, like your daughters, it's important to step up and step into the situation and understand the opportunities that exist in stewarding that wealth. And there are all sorts of organizations that are there to help you.
I love the idea of giving because I think it is very empowering and not in a sense of, oh, that makes me powerful, but just in your self worth, feeling like you are helping somebody. And I really think we are designed to do that
Yes,
as a society.
good for you. I agree 100%. I agree 100%. But sometimes we just don't, because it's the kind of thing that's easy to postpone, procrastinate on. Like, I don't know who I want to, it's a big issue. And that's why working with an advisor, it's up to them to ask you those questions. Well, really, when it comes right down to it, what do you care the most about? And nobody wants to focus on death. On the other hand, nobody gets out of here alive. So
True.
what part of this do you not understand? And nobody knows exactly when they will die. And so one of the ways that you often work with clients is you simply say, imagine this is the day after you're gone. Usually the way people say is, well, if anything should ever happen to you, well, guess what? It's going to happen.
Yeah, I will.
So imagine it's the day after. And what does your world look like? Like, the best thing you can do is get your affairs in order all the time and review it every 2 years, 3 years, whenever. Review it. Is this still something that I want to do? Because, of course, tax laws are changing all the time. There are new opportunities that are
Yes.
coming in. So that's that trusted advisor's job, is to blend in all of that knowledge to your scenario. So you need to be revisiting things frequently. It's like going to the hairdresser. It's like going to anybody that you need regular updates on. You don't go to a hairdresser unless you trust them to do their best job for you. So you want the same thing for your wealth scenario and the same thing for your health. And like going to the hairdresser, there are all sorts of possibilities. Is it short? Is it long? Is it colored? Is it not? Blah, blah, blah. But that's the professional that you've gone to have your back and help you be the best you can be.
Very powerful. Speaking, not tiptoeing around the subject of death. I think that's hard for a lot of people,
Very hard.
both men and women. And I know for myself, being 63, you reach your 60s, and a doctor actually said this to me, a longevity doctor. He says, rather than counting forward, you start to count backward. How many years, which was a little disconcerting, but I thought about it. I thought, oh gosh, she's right. And I think if we could have those open conversations and not look at it with fear and plan, it would make a big difference, even for the generation coming up behind us.
Exactly. Exactly. And when I had all my clients, I used to really encourage families to participate in estate planning and family planning and end of life planning in the summertime, because that happens to be a time when people tend to gather. They're at a family cottage,
Yeah,
and it's easy to be casual and just say, okay, let's have this conversation. It's not one that anybody wants to have. On the other hand, any smart person will know, obviously, nobody gets out of here alive. And before I'm gone, I want to have this conversation. But we can't assume that it's always the oldest ones are the ones that are going to go first.
it's
What
true.
about younger people? What if that younger person, something happens, they're in a really bad car accident or whatever? Like, what about organ donation? What about I mean, let's have these conversations. And the first one will be difficult, but the more you have them, the more everybody will appreciate having had this conversation.
Mm. That's true. There are no guarantees in life. We don't know from day to day. We do our best in the moment and hope for those years and that longevity, but none of us are guaranteed that. So looking at it openly and honestly are really important. Do you recommend something like a family trust?
Family trusts are great. Family trusts, it just depends on what the purpose of it is. I think one of the benefits of a family trust is you may not have grandchildren yet, but eventually you probably will. And so that's a great way to, I'm all about continuity, like not
Hmm.
just doing this and the person dies and nobody understood. Like that's a great way of role modeling and keeping the whole scenario going. So, why a family trust? What is the purpose of this? How are we all involved? What are the sorts of things that we want to do? And how, who's driving the bus, because you've got to pick some of those roles. So that's a perfect way to have a lot of really, really, really good conversation.
Now, I want to shift gears just a little bit, thinking about menopause. And I got a statistic, I'd actually heard it before, and then I saw it on your website that 80% of menopausal women experience symptoms, yet half never discuss them with doctors. 1 in 10 quit their jobs at the peak of their careers due to severe unmanaged symptoms. Really spoke to me. The idea that women would walk away from something that is successful, something that they're at the peak of, the prime of, because you don't hear of this with men. They're going to just keep going forward. And what can we do about this? What do you think the answer is? Is it more education? Is it the health care that women receive? Do they get gaslit? Are we not having the open conversations? What do you think's happening here?
All of the above. All of the above. Because now there's a whole lot more openness to talking about it. And as a result of doing that whole hot and bothered campaign, I've been invited to be a guest speaker at a wealth advisory conference, with the audience being mostly male. And so I'm going to start off.
Oh.
I'm going to start off by saying, listen, guys, don't think for a minute this doesn't include you. That's why they call it menopause. Hello. But my whole purpose in accepting the invitation is again to increase awareness. Women have just quietly suffered, and our mothers and
Mhm.
grandmothers didn't have to be in public. If you were having hot sweats, or you were, symptoms that having to go to whatever, any of those things, you were in the privacy of your home. Now we're out in the public. And if you're in a prime leadership role, hoping to advance to the next, and these symptoms are getting in the way, no woman ever wants to embarrass herself. So that's why you just quietly pull yourself back, and it's like, this is too much. Because that's when it gets into the whole stress and mental health scenario, because of trying to cope with these physical symptoms that are just overriding you.
Well put. I was thinking I had a similar experience, and I wasn't in some high-powered position. I was actually working at a exercise studio, a small gym here in Albuquerque. I was personal training, teaching classes, and going out into the community and teaching community classes, group classes. And I remember we're all having a meeting, and I'm in the throes of the whole thing, and just suddenly I could feel it, like my face turned bright red. My whole body was sweating. And it was so embarrassing sitting at that meeting. I was at the time, the oldest trainer there. So I already had that. And all these young people, there I am in kind of a youth oriented
Right.
business. And I was so embarrassed.
Just devastating. Devastating. And you probably just wanted to exit stage left.
I
Like,
did.
get me out of here. Like, really,
Yes.
this is too much, too much. But you see, now we can step out and step up and say, this is what's happening. One of the
Yeah.
phrases that women often use, it's a power surge. It's a power surge. And so
I love it.
and when now that I've gotten into this topic, and the main reason why I picked up on it is I remember being in my phase when I
Oh,
wanted
yeah.
to exit stage left, and I'm all about women's leadership. So if these women leaders are stepping back or stepping aside, this is wrong. This is wrong. It's through no fault of their own that their physical body is such that it's going through this whole hormonal transformation. And actually, at this conference as well, one of my opening slides, because guys will go, well, wait a minute, don't talk about depression. That happens to guys too, is to define menopause and andropause. Of course, it happens to men as well, but not to the extent that it happens to women. And think about it, this happens to every single woman who has lived this long in this entire world, with, of course, many different cultural differences how they deal with it. But this is the physical body, and this is what it goes through. And when women are in communities and organizations and these symptoms come into play, this is what you need to be aware of. And as wealth advisors, if you're prospecting new clients, this is something that you need to have an appreciation for. You'll be a better wealth advisor if you know what women are going through. So it's all about knowledge and awareness and information and not apologizing.
Yes, yes. When I went through the whole process, and perimenopause was quite a ride. It was actually easier once I got on the other side of menopause. But I just remember feeling embarrassment and that I was the only one suffering because nobody was talking. It was not like it is now. Nobody was on Instagram talking about menopause and hot flashes. It was all very hush hush.
Right.
And I just suffered and didn't understand and thought there was something wrong with me. The brain fog, the emotional ups and downs. There's like some 100 symptoms women can go through potentially.
Unbelievable. It really is incredible. But more and more through research, and this is one of the reasons why I partnered with Mount Sinai Hospital in Toronto, is they've now created a whole separate focus area on women's mature health. So you pay attention to what in the world is going on, and you start to direct some research dollars to exactly what is going on and come up with some solutions that can help people work their way through it. Just talking about it openly and not apologizing. Carry on. Carry on. You've got a lot to offer. Everybody's unique. Carry on. Don't
Yes.
head for the exits.
Yes. And for me, I've made really a career out of what I went through.
Perfect.
Because I thought, you know what? I got to step into the gap.
Wonderful.
And at the time I started talking about it, really nobody was, but I didn't want women to feel the way I felt.
No.
And that was my primary reason.
And think about your girls. They'll be way
Yes.
further ahead. You are already creating a legacy by sharing all of that information with them in advance.
Yes, even my son, because I think men
Yeah.
should understand this too. I wrote a book. It's been, I think, about 2 years ago, Finding Purpose in the Pause: Your Guide to Thriving in Menopause and Beyond.
Wonderful.
And I tell a little bit of my own story and share, just some of what I've learned through the health and fitness space and nutrition space. But I was surprised by the number of men who read the book,
Wonderful.
wrote me emails and said, "You just, I think, saved me from divorce." I think one of them said to me, because he didn't understand and they were fighting. He didn't understand the mood swings. And apparently divorce can be quite high when women are going through that perimenopausal
Exactly.
time of life.
I will track your book down because I will definitely highlight in this presentation, because you're absolutely right. Women are not really understanding what's happening to them. And then you get all these cheap comments coming at you about, can you not remember anything or something like, and it just is
Right.
so wearing. It's so wearing.
Yes.
It just takes your confidence right away at a time when you're not feeling well.
Right. Right. And it can be an opportunity. I think when you go through menopause, you have space, you have time to do some of the things you did. Because when you're raising kids,
Yeah.
when I was raising kids, I wasn't thinking. I was just
Doing
going on the go all the time, driving all over the city, 3 different schools. And when I got on the other side of that, yes, I love being a mom, love those years, but it cleared space for me to pursue things that I had never dreamed of pursuing.
Perfect. No, you're absolutely right. I refer to it. It's just face down. You just don't look up. You don't, because you've got to-dos all the way along. People you hadn't seen in 20 years, all of a sudden you have time. But up until then, you don't have time. Any extra time you have is you got to rest. So you're ready to go again.
Exactly. Sleep, get up, do it, repeat.
Right. Repeat. Rinse. Exactly.
That is it. That is it. Now, this question, not on menopause, but and it's kind of a general question concerning both women and men, and it may be more of a male issue. It may seem like an odd question, but I have seen this. I've seen it in my own family where somebody has done the right things. They've invested, they have saved, they have set up the trust, they have prepared their kids. And then they reach, like, say, late 80s, and the mortality is really, really pushing up against them. And they've almost made too much of their life center around it. I don't know if that's a little bit more of the male thinking, but I have seen this in my family. I'm thinking of someone in particular. So there's a little bit of depression that sets in because it's like, okay, you can't take that with you. And yes, you've set up this trust, but building really a good part of his life around it.
Well, we know that mental health is crucial every step of the way in our lives, every step of the way. And I think when that happens, that's when, if you've worked with the same advisor who's known your story pretty much all the way along, that person may not have become a client until maybe they were in their 50s or so, but 50 to 80 is still a long time. They would know this
It
person
is.
and they can do a lot of reinforcing. By then you know the personality that you're working with. And if you can see this sort of thing happening, you can give them some positive reinforcement. And including the family is a great way to reinforce as well. You're just paying attention to who that person is and where they're at now, and extending generosity and extra care to make sure that they continue to be as well as they possibly can. Now, maybe there's something physically that has come into play. Maybe they've had a mini stroke or something and has caused this change in
Mhm.
behavior. Or maybe it is dementia or Alzheimer's. As you well know, there are all sorts of diseases that kick in those later years. But I think keeping that person's spirits alive and positive is really, really, really important. Really important.
Yes, hope. I always think we need it more as we get older and not less. We need purpose and hope more, not
No,
less.
exactly. And I was with a family member the other day, and I was shocked that this person hadn't done more planning than they should have. And when you get into your mid 80s, this is really, really, really serious territory, because to try to talk to an 85-year-old about new approaches that you might think about taking is too much heavy lifting, way too much heavy lifting. Their ability to understand how this, and often if they haven't done things at that age, they become really defensive when they're hearing new
Mhm.
things that they could have
Yeah,
done.
they
And
do.
that's a shame. And so I tried to have a conversation with this person, but realized, you know what? It's just too late. And that's the tragedy. By the time you're 70, you should have a lot of your affairs in order that you review on a regular basis. You should basically have things framed out. And it's like that with your health as well. By the time you're 70, you really want to have an idea of how healthy am I? What are the challenges that I need to address? Same thing with your wealth. By then, if you've been a moderate investor, you're not all of a sudden going to say, God, put me into some high risk stuff. I really want to ramp up this portfolio. I mean,
Yeah.
no advisor in their right mind would do that.
No.
And so my point is, by the time you're 70 or shortly thereafter, you should basically have that framework in place, realizing that you may live to 100. On the other hand, you may live to 72. So let's have this framework in place that has addressed a lot of the issues that I think are really important, that are real opportunities for me to have maximized everything I possibly can do. And then what you do is you review it. You review it frequently. And those reviews are always positive events, because you know that you're working with a base that you've got in place, that the person understands and appreciates. And it isn't like you're adding anything new into this. And so, the person can feel confident and comfortable with what they've got, where they're heading, and what the situation is. At that age and stage, this one the other day, it's really end of life planning. And, end of life planning can begin in 70s. Another topic that often comes up is people when they get to age 70, they realize they've got all kinds of life insurance because they would have had it from their corporation that had it as a benefit. They may have bought it for themselves. And normally they would have purchased it for replacement income. Now they don't need replacement income. So it's like, why do I have all this insurance? Wait a minute. That is the most powerful vehicle for philanthropy. And normally, if you're directing those life insurance dollars to philanthropy, you're going to get a huge tax deduction. So it enhances your net worth at the same time your self worth. And again, that wealth advisor who's done a holistic plan is the person that will look at. I had one client he was like the millionaire next door. He's always in his blue jeans, always in, his wife ended up with brain cancer. He was such a gem to her. She said, never mind me, you just go get yourself a little red Mustang and he would never do that. But he had all this insurance. And I said, don't you let that insurance go. If you're thinking about letting that go, I want to involve your kids. He had a daughter and a son that I knew. And let's talk about the possibilities because he was a caring guy. And that insurance payout when he dies, directed to philanthropy, was a huge deduction in his estate. So, he sails off into the sunset, having made a huge contribution. His kids, of course, he's now a role model to them in the way they behave. And the bottom line is it enhances the final tax return from a net worth standpoint. So never let that insurance go. There are great ways to deal with that insurance policy. I was talking with a person the other day that we don't have this in Canada, but you do have it in the US, where if you have an insurance policy, you can sell that to somebody else. And it can be sold to somebody who needs insurance, who is prepared to buy insurance, because maybe they're in their 50s and are uninsurable and you're in your 80s. So you get the cash infusion and they now get an insurance policy. So that's why trusted advisors are crucial. And you know that about health. Same idea. If it's a specialist who focuses on whatever aspect of our health and well-being, that's who you want to talk to.
You're the first person that I've heard say that about the life insurance. I had never heard it until now. So I've just learned something because I did not even think about that. Because you think of life insurance as, oh, you're not going to need that as you get old. You just don't think of it
No.
that way.
It's too expensive. And why do we have this? And who wants it? Yeah, well, I had this
Right.
conversation the other day with these people who have rental income properties. And I said, now tell me how important insurance is with those rental income properties. It's a must. It's an absolute must. But
Yes.
if you've bought, and your son, actually tell your son and your daughters too to pay attention to insurance, because the best time to buy insurance is when you're young, because that's when you're healthy and that's when it is the least expensive. And if you buy that in case I die, then I've got some over time, replacement income. But then longer term, that policy you bought when you were 20 can turn into your eventual philanthropic statement. So it isn't just for that immediate need right now. I mean, as you go along, you can change the beneficiaries. So
Right.
insurance is really, really, really powerful. It's complex because there are all sorts of different, it's like investment.
It is.
There are all sorts of different investments that so it's just as complex, but really, really, really powerful. Really powerful.
What do you think is the best type of insurance?
I can't answer that question because it really depends. It really depends. I mean, business owners love insurance because, there's key man insurance. It just depends on who the client is, what their scenario is, and how insurance can play a really, really major role.
I see so many parallels as again, why I'm smiling, because people will say, how many carbs, how many this, how many that. I'm like, well, it depends.
Yeah, exactly. I know. You sound like a politician.
And there's always those individual circumstances that make all the difference.
Precisely. And that trusted advisor, the best trusted advisors are the ones that get all those details pertaining to you. Because that's when they can do their best job. I mean, there's no point trying to set somebody up into something that is not ideal for them.
Very true. It's making me think I need to have more communication with our advisor because there's that tendency you set it up, you get busy, and then you don't check in with them.
Do,
I don't.
do. The best thing you can do, especially with everything that's going on now. The
Oh,
markets are
goodness.
crazy and, who knows? But the best thing you can do, if they're not scheduling regular reviews, as you just say, going forward, these are my expectations because nobody's getting any younger and the world doesn't seem to be getting any friendlier or kinder. So I think it's, to have that peace of mind that lets you sleep at night. I really want to make sure that everything's in the best order it can be and that I understand and appreciate what you've done.
Mm.
Sometimes you can just, hand it over and let them look after you. Well, again, it's your life, it's your money, it's your future, and they're there to help you, not to do it all for you. That's often when you get surprises.
Yes. Again, those parallels to health coaching,
Yes,
it's a partnership.
spot on.
It's not me just telling them things, and it's not them just, implementing what I've suggested. There is a back and forth, and it's continually changing based on their changing life needs
Right.
and their health
Spot
needs.
on, exactly.
So so I definitely see that. Now, looking at the current environment, because it's anxiety provoking, and it was interesting. I've seen a therapist for years. I'm a big believer if you need that mental health support. She's helped me over the years, so many areas of my life. And she brought up the fact I was talking about having a little anxiety, and she says, "Well, is the current?" And she even told me, she said, "I'm not getting political here. I'm just talking in general, economically, so socially. The whole landscape is so anxiety provoking. Do you think that's affecting you?" And I found that interesting because she says she's seeing so much of it with her female clients.
So true. So true. It's like, well, which way do we go? Like, what the heck is going on and what do I need to prepare myself for? I mean, nobody has a magic wand. They really, really do not.
Hmm.
But I think more importantly, because it is such a challenge, is being part of community is really important. Really important. So if you're participating in an organization where you're helping others in the community, that kind of keeps you in the game, but it takes the focus off you being anxious. Now you're directing your anxiety to helping somebody else,
Yes.
which kind of, diffuses things. It doesn't take it away, it just kind of diffuses it. But I think the more you feel that you're part of a bigger community trying to deal with all of this collectively, perhaps a little bit more peace of mind comes to mind because you realize it isn't just about you and what you're thinking and what you're feeling.
I love the idea of community. Now you do a membership. Do I have that correct, or something similar to that?
Not yet. We're just, we've got a website and we do different events. And when we do our events, then obviously people are welcome to sign up. And some, depending on how many sponsors I get, that depends on whether or not the participants pay. But
Mm.
membership is always something that I've taken a look at. So keep it in mind. One of the topics that I'm sort of thinking about moving into, I'm involved with Rotary. And
Mhm.
when I first became a Rotarian 30 years ago, I moved into a club where I was the only female and it was all senior executive men. And this one
Yes.
man said to me, Nancy, he was kind of apologizing, like you're here with all these old timers. He said, you have to realize that they're in their age of integrity. And I'm thinking, what the heck is that? So, of course, you look at the definition of integrity, and I'm thinking, you know what? It's always stuck with me. And I thought, women now, a lot of the women that I know and have worked with, this went off. Are you there?
I'm here. Yeah, we're good.
Women are in their age of integrity. And really, the age of integrity means I can't believe I've lived this long. I can't believe I've done this well. And what do I want the rest of my life to be in terms of what I want to do, but what I want to create as a legacy? And I think it's an area where there's a huge opportunity for a lot of conversation and a lot of opportunity to go beyond just your own self.
You are just speaking my language right now, because I've been so much because I think of authenticity being kind of in alignment with integrity. And in my community, we just went through something. It had nothing to do with exercise or nutrition, but it was about living in alignment with your
There
values
you go.
and how important that is.
Right.
And especially as we get older.
Exactly, especially as we get older. And that then becomes your community because you spend time with like-minded people. And that's who you generate a lot of energy from because you're sharing your uniqueness and you're hearing their uniqueness, and it really becomes a collective.
Mm. It really does. It can be a little difficult. I know this because being in the space and bringing women together, especially virtually, it's almost easier with younger women. I work primarily with women over 40 and 50, but it's almost easier with younger women. Women over 50, it's like there's a little reluctance to come together in a community. I'm not sure what that is.
Well, I think it's kind of the same thing that I've experienced in the wealth scenario is women kind of say, "Oh my goodness, I don't want to ask any questions because I'm kind of embarrassed. I know I should have known this by now, but I don't know it, and I've never
Okay.
told anybody I didn't know it. So I'm not going to ask a stupid question because then they'll know for sure." And so I think there's just a reluctance to open up and admit that, you know what, I never really did know that. I never really did understand that. And that's when it comes down to courage. Just have the courage. Just do it. Like it's your life, participate. And if you don't understand, then ask. And you'll be doing it respectfully. It isn't as though you're trying to put the person on the spot. It's just, I'm sorry, I didn't understand that. And this is terrific that I've now got the opportunity to learn.
Mm. Yeah, just having that permission. I tell a funny story, nothing to do with finances, but I teach macros, protein, carbs, fats, how to balance them out. And this was like, I don't know, 15 years ago before I really got started. And we were all in a meeting and I'm coaching, I'm teaching classes. I'm in that same studio where I had the hot flashes. And somebody brought up macros. And I was so embarrassed because I didn't know what a macro was.
Right. Exactly.
So I said nothing, went home and researched it and went,
You did the research when you got into your car before you got home.
so here I am, teaching women. And I started out not knowing what a macro was. So it's okay not to know. It really is okay. Now, Nancy, I want to be respectful of your time. As we start to wrap up, is there anything that we didn't cover that you think would be really pertinent for the listener or those watching to know?
I'll just reinforce a lot of what I've already said, and that is your life. It is your life. Really, it is your really, really special, unique life. And we've talked about how all these challenges in the world are a little bit overwhelming. And if we're still vertical, if we're still alive and well, that in itself is a huge blessing. And so really just step up and step out and spend some time talking to yourself and just say, where am I at? What's important to me? What are the things that I want to do? What else can I do? Who else can I possibly extend some generosity to? Whatever. It's all about just being a full participant in your life for your own personal well-being.
Well said. Well said. Nancy, this has been such a great conversation. Enlightening for me. It's made me think of things differently. Now, if someone would like to get a hold of you, follow your work, learn more about you, where should they find you at?
Well, we're on all the different social media, but the website is womenworthwellness.com. And my email is just simply nancy@womenworthwellness.com. So anybody can reach out to me anytime. It's a 24/7 operation. Who knows when you'll get a response, but if I'm up in the middle of the night, I check my email. So could be in the middle of the night. Who knows? But I'd love to hear from people. And Carol, I don't know what has happened, but you still heard me. So that's good. But congrats to you for all that you're doing. And it was a pleasure to speak with you and be part of everything that you're doing.
Thank you, Nancy. It was an absolute pleasure to meet you and speak with you as well. And thank you for the work that you are doing for women. It's so important and it's been much needed for a long time.
Excellent. And we'll just keep it all going.
Yes, absolutely. And to our listeners, wherever you are in the world, we wish you every blessing. Bye for now.